Hello and welcome to this video, Planning from 40,000 feet. Let's jump right in. So I want to just remind you of the Agile Manifesto, and right down here it says we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value all these things, and responding to change over following a plan is one of them. So a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, we don't do planning. You can't get any dates out of us because we're doing agile. And what they're forgetting is that it is this little two-sentence or two-line sentence on the bottom here that says, that is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So there is value in planning. There is planning in agile. And let's take a look at the 5-layer planning model that is pretty commonly used in agile contexts. So it's like peeling an onion, this 5-layer model. Each level goes a little bit deeper into detail, a little bit deeper into granularity of what you're trying to do. Now remember, one of the things that we want to do in an agile context is just in time. So the planning we do is just in time planning. That doesn't mean you don't plan until the last minute. It means you're continually elaborating. It's called progressive elaboration in old PMI terms. That's what they called it, progressive elaboration, or rolling wave is another term that they used for a similar kind of approach to this. Though the Agilists may burn me at the stake for saying that PMI was doing this long before they had the terminology. But oh well, the truth hurts sometimes. All right, here we go. 5 layers of agile planning. Little guy up here with his glasses is layer 1. Vision. You have to know where you're going. We want to understand what's the objective, what's the outcome we're striving toward. And it all starts with focusing on the highest level vision. And then we have roadmap planning. We have release level planning that breaks down the roadmap. We have iteration planning that breaks down what's in a release. And then we have daily planning. So you've heard of the daily scrum, the daily stand-up, that meeting. That's actually a planning meeting. Let's dive into a little bit more detail on each one of these. Agile chartering is something that is maybe the 0 layer. It's the business case part of it. This is one model for a charter in an agile context. It's just 6 bullet points. But I find it actually really useful for people to understand, who, what, when, where, why, how. There's also the crossing the chasm. If you look up crossing the chasm elevator speech, you'll get another form of agile charter, and that's another one I've used many times. Maybe I'll give you a link for it in the documentation section. But so agile chartering, you want to have just be high level, barely enough, barely sufficient is what a term that they used to use. They don't use that term too much anymore because people kind of chafe at the concept of barely sufficient. It needs to be sufficient. Yeah, it does. It just doesn't need to be more than sufficient, which is what they were trying to get at with the barely enough, barely sufficient concept. So vision planning looks at years way out into the future. You're not talking about anything that's near term. So I use this analogy on the right in the images as we dive down deeper. It's the snowman, right? It's the goal. It's the big thing we're trying to get to. It helps you with prioritizing what's happening, prioritizing within the company vision, right? So the vision for your product is coordinated with the vision for the company. The people who work on it the most or have commitment in this level are usually the executives, right? So they're making funding commitments, they're making conceptual agreements on this big picture. And they're going to coordinate with other projects or other products within the company vision. Roadmap planning is typically 2 to 4 releases worth. It can be anything, like the timeline. Usually it's something on the range of half yearly or quarterly that you're looking at roadmaps. So they're way far out into the future. not all the way out into years into the future, but they're a ways out there into the future. You want to be at this level prioritizing just the conceptual features that you're talking about. This is where we would be doing what we were talking about in the story mapping video, right? Mapping out the product. This is that level. So high level features where you prioritize and interdependencies between features. You're looking at that. Again, here at this level, the executives are committing to it. The product management is also involved here, and with input from the team. So those bullet points where it talks about commitment in these slides are in kind of priority order. The person who's making the strongest commitment is the executives. The next strongest commitment is the product manager or product owner, whatever you want to call that role. There's debate about those roles, and you should be clear in your organization. Input from the team is provided there. And again, you're coordinating at this level with now other projects that are happening on the roadmap. What other features are being implemented, that kind of thing. Here, you can see this is like the individual components that make up the snowman. And here you've got just the starting of a snowball. This is the release we're talking about. What is one piece? And one piece is somewhere between 2 and 4 iterations usually, though in really well-running agile organizations, a release is every iteration, maybe even a release is every day. Here I'm talking about typical agile in a waterfall context, in an enterprise context. So it often happens that it's every 2 to 4 releases. Prioritization in this context is looking at the roadmap and the vision and understanding why we're doing what we're doing in this place. We're wanting to look at the epics. So we're not talking about those in the story mapping exercise. We had high-level feature discussions. Now we want to break those high-level features into the epics that make them up, and we want to plan those into each release, right? Where did those fit in each release? So you're kind of breaking the high-level thing down into a more granular element here. Here we're wanting to commit our level of confidence to the executives, right? So the delivery team has a higher level of ownership here, right, than the product manager or owner, because they're having to say what we can actually put into a release. It's hard to say which one's higher in this case, because there's so much back and forth at release planning. The product manager wants to say, this is the priority of the things I want in the release. And then the delivery team says, we can probably get you XYZ based on our velocity and our history. And then the product manager or product owner would come back and say, well, then I want to prioritize it this way, because it may actually change their prioritization given what could be in a given release and the relationships between those things. Coordination at the release planning level is, wow, the people and resources required to execute on that release. Remember, we're talking 2 to 4 iterations worth, so anywhere from 4 to 8, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, something like that. So it's really very quick. Iteration planning or sprint planning, if you're using Scrum, uses sprints. Iteration is just a more generic term for it. Here we're talking 2 to 4 weeks worth. We're wanting to prioritize this in relationship to the whole, the roadmap and the releases and the vision. How do we fit in there? We want to be constantly remembering the why. Why? Because that drives our motivation. It gets the team behind it and gets them energized, because they'll be understanding why in the heck we're doing this. If you're just saying implement these things, there's no engagement, and in any creative pursuit you need engagement. So for more about creating engagement in your teams, go to the teams and team building section. But here where the team makes commitment for what's going to be delivered in that 2 to 4 week time period. No one can tell them what to do. Only the team pulls in the work that they think they can get done in that time frame. And here we're wanting to coordinate, well, you're wanting to coordinate the stories and tasks associated with them that you're pulling in. You're coordinating this is happening at sprint planning. You're coordinating who's working on what, who's going to be where. Assignments is an old school term. Really, it's who's volunteering to work on what work. You're also coordinating at this level between Scrum teams. So sometimes you'll be working on a program where you have multiple teams, and those teams will have interdependencies at times. So you'll want to be coordinating across those things. So the delivery teams will be coordinating with each other. So that's the iteration planning. That's sprint planning. At the most granular, see, there's a snowflake, and now it's the water that makes up the snowflake. At the most granular level, we're talking 24-hour stand-ups. Every 24 hours, you have a stand-up, and that is a daily coordination meeting. We want to be using that time to be refocusing on our why, and Scrum Masters / product owners need to be, that's your job in that context, is to help remind people of why we're doing what we're doing, right? What's most important in this sprint. We're coordinating between each other. If you think about it, actually, construction teams have a daily stand-up too, and the purpose is very similar, except the purpose in a construction team is life and death, because you want to know as a construction worker if someone's going to be swinging a girder through your area. So you need to be sharing, hey, I'm going to be working on the second floor in zone 2, and then you'll hear somebody else later go, oh, hey, by the way, I'm planning on swinging some girders across there. I don't want to take your head off. So let's be sure we talk to each other after this. So it's the same kind of idea in software. It's just not as life and death, in that, hey, I'm going to be working on the checkout cart code. Just want to make sure that that's, I'm working there. Oh, by the way, says another person in the group, I planned on working on the checkout code too, to do this piece of the feature I'm working on. Oh, well, then let's coordinate, right? Or I plan on finishing this code at thus and such time. Can somebody pick up the testing for it and validate that I've met the acceptance criteria? Anybody can do that. It's not a tester coder split. I'm just saying someone should double check your work, right? Or I'm going to finish it, and according to our definition of done, we say we have to have a code review. Okay, then this one's going to go into code review today. Can we have a code review meeting? That's the kind of coordination and planning that happens at the daily stand-up. So it's that granular of a level where you'll be doing what you will be doing at the daily stand-up. The thing is, don't make the stand-up, we'll talk about this later, but don't make the stand-up ever be a status meeting. It's a coordination meeting. And if nobody else on your team needs to know what you're working on because no one else is doing it, then don't say it, right? Don't tell me what you did yesterday. It doesn't really matter that much, unless it is, I worked on the checkout cart and it's ready for testing. It's something, and it's available for you now, right? If it was just, I worked on this and I'm going to keep working on it, who cares? Nobody cares. You need to communicate what you're working on now, but nobody's checking up on you. This isn't elementary school where they're making sure that you did your letter sheets. All right, enough soapboxing. Daily planning. I like this chart, so you might take a screenshot of it. This is a handy way of just looking at vision, roadmap, release, iteration, and daily planning. What's the time frame that they're looking at? What's the commitment? Who's on the hook for making commitments there? What are you coordinating with at each level? And then what's the scope of that work, right? Yep. So that's just a useful tool for you. All right. So that is planning at the 40,000 foot level. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.